Before smartphones, winter meant the front door locking behind you, bare hands packing snow into forts, and your only warning for blizzards was a parent yelling when the streetlight came on. No texts, no weather apps. How did an entire generation survive in the cold with nothing but memory, grit, and the streetlight rule? The answers will make you rethink everything you know about growing up unplugged. Every winter morning started with a mission: get outside no matter what. The front door would click shut behind you, sometimes with a warning: don't come back in until the streetlights flicker on. The cold bit through your sleeves before you even reached the yard, but that didn't matter. Snow packed between bare fingers, stinging and numb, as you sculpted the first wall of a fort. There were no instructions, just trial and error, stacking snow until your hands hurt or your gloves soaked through. Sometimes the fort would collapse halfway, but you would just start again, breath fogging the air, laughter echoing from somewhere down the block. Parents meant business. They wanted quiet inside, so outside you stayed. If you knocked too soon, you would get a shout from the kitchen, not until it's dark, and you would trudge back to your construction site. The streetlight's glow was the only clock that counted. Time vanished in the white silence, interrupted only by the distant snap of a neighbor's shovel or the sudden call of your name when dinner was finally ready. Plans for sledding didn't come together with a tap or a ping. They happened in the middle of the hallway right after lunch or while zipping up boots by the cubbies. You'd lean in and whisper, "Tomorrow your hill or mine." Heads would nod, fingers crossed, the snow stuck around. There was no backup plan, no group chat to double-check who was coming. You just agreed and that was it. If something changed, you had to deliver the news face-to-face. Backing out meant braving the embarrassment in person, usually with a mumbled apology and a shrug. Sometimes you'd show up and find the hill empty, so you'd wait, stomp your feet for warmth, or join a new crew already launching sleds. Groups formed and faded without a single call or text. If you missed out, you waited for stories at school the next day, knowing you couldn't scroll for updates or see who posted what. Commitment was measured by cold toes and showing up, not by last-minute messages. Getting ready for winter play took serious strategy. Parents lined up boots, hats, and wool socks like a pit crew prepping for a race. The first layer was always long underwear, followed by sweaters, then the thickest jacket in the closet. Gloves went on first, with mittens pulled over for backup, double insulation, just in case. Scarves wrapped so high only your eyes peeked out, and hats stretched down to cover ears. For the youngest, snowsuits turned them into waddling astronauts. The result was predictable: kids sweating before even reaching the porch, but still somehow shivering a few minutes later. Wet gloves and socks never went in the dryer. They got hung over heaters or draped by the fireplace, steaming up the house. Losing a glove was a mini disaster. No one drove back to find it, you just wore a mismatched pair and shrugged it off. Navigating the neighborhood meant memorizing every shortcut, backyard fences, gaps in hedges, and the well-worn paths through neighbors' yards. If a backpack was left behind at school, that meant a solo trek through knee-deep snow, retracing steps by memory. Getting home was an adventure, but every kid knew the way, no GPS required. At exactly 6 p.m., the living room became a command center. Jamal's mom would call everyone in from the kitchen, and the whole family would squeeze onto the couch, eyes fixed on the glowing CRT screen. There was no scrolling app, no phone alert. The weatherman was the oracle, and his word was law. If you missed the forecast, you spent the night guessing if the world would be buried in snow by morning. Sometimes the weatherman would gesture at a swirling radar image and say in a serious voice, "Heavy snow on the way, possible school closures." That single sentence could send a jolt of hope through the house, but nothing compared to the 6 a.m. phone call. The phone would ring while it was still dark and everyone would freeze. The robotic voice on the other end said, "All schools in the district are closed today." That announcement was pure magic. Siblings would cheer, parents would sigh, and Jamal would leap off the couch, already planning the day's adventures. For a few seconds, the whole neighborhood felt united by that one call, the promise of a day spent outside, free from homework and early alarms. Cultural commentator Dr. Lena Brooks puts it this way: for kids of the 90s, winter was a series of rituals that ran on hope and habit, not on instant updates. The 6 p.m. weather forecast was not just information. It was a family event everyone shared, with real suspense. If you missed it, you waited and wondered. There were no push notifications, no live radar maps. Instead, you learned patience, and sometimes you learned disappointment. Brooks points out that today, a single buzz from a phone can change a family's plans in seconds. In the 90s, entire neighborhoods adjusted their routines around a single TV broadcast or a phone call from the school district. We trusted the weatherman more than any algorithm. The news was communal, not personalized. If school was canceled, it was a shared celebration. Everyone found out at the same time. She laughs, remembering that anticipation was half the fun. Waiting for the forecast or for that early morning call created a kind of magic. You never knew what the next day would bring. Now winter alerts arrive before you have even finished your cereal. Friday night meant a trip to Blockbuster, where every kid in town seemed to be clutching the same blue and yellow cartridge box. The stakes were clear. You had 2 days to conquer whatever game you grabbed. There was no backup plan if someone else snagged the only copy of Mario Kart. Sometimes you walked out with a random title just because it was the last one left. Back home, the real work began. Cartridges did not always cooperate. Sometimes they froze at the worst moment, right after a boss fight. The universal fix was to blow on the contacts like a shaman, slap it back in, and cross your fingers. If that failed, you tried every trick: swap slots, jiggle the controller, pray to the gaming gods. There were no YouTube walkthroughs or online cheat codes. Every puzzle was solved by trial and error and playground rumors. The clock ticked louder as Sunday crept closer. Beating the game before the dreaded return deadline was a badge of honor. If you did not, you faced the ultimate shame. You begged your parents for another rental, knowing there would be late fees and no guarantee the cartridge would be there next weekend. The kitchen phone was a stage, and everyone was in the audience. The cords stretched across the linoleum, never quite long enough to escape the stairs. Calling a friend meant the whole house listened in, and if you dared to call a crush, you had to survive the gauntlet. Older siblings making faces, parents pretending not to hear, and little sisters lurking with ammunition for tomorrow's gossip. Caller ID was a luxury most families did not have, so you never knew who would answer. Sometimes it was her dad, which meant you had to ask, voice cracking, if she was home. Long calls risked a parent picking up from the upstairs extension, snapping, "Get off, I need the line." And if the phone was busy, you just kept trying, pacing the kitchen and hoping nobody else beat you to it. Privacy was a myth, and embarrassment was guaranteed. Winter break arrived with the quiet thud of a backpack dropped by the door, and then nothing. For 2 weeks, the world outside school just faded out. There were no texts, no posts, no way to know what anyone else was doing unless they called your house or showed up at your door. Most days, the phone sat silent. It was pure silence. You'd fill the hours with whatever you could find, flipping through old magazines, rereading the same comic for the 10th time, or just staring out the window at the snow. Boredom was a given, shared by everyone, even if you didn't realize it. Sometimes you'd bump into a friend at the sledding hill, but mostly winter break meant being on your own. The real payoff came when school started again. Hallways buzzed with stories. Who broke an arm sledding, who saw a movie, who got a weird haircut. Gossip hit all at once, like the rush after a long silence. Today, real-time alerts and endless notifications shape every winter day. But resilience, creativity, and connection don't need an app. They're learned, not downloaded. As screens mediate more childhoods, the question is what we lose along with convenience. What do you remember building when boredom was your only prompt? Drop it below.